I hope everybody enjoyed lunch and will avoid the food coma as we get started here for the afternoon. We're really privileged to have two highly distinguished individuals, former teammates with us this afternoon. Let me introduce to my right here, Greg Johnson. Greg is the EVP and Chief Commercial Officer at Intuit, where he's responsible for the QuickBooks and MailChimp franchises. You know, he's demonstrated dynamic leadership, strategic vision, and, you know, this deep commitment to sort of fostering an inclusive environment. I think his career is sort of a testament to, you know, compassionate leadership, empathy. Many of the values I think Bill instilled in the culture at Intuit are exemplified in the work that Greg does with he and his team. To Greg's right is David Hiltaki. David is a retired Air Force colonel, and he spent 23 years in the Air Force. And, you know, one of his great accomplishments is he was an F-16 fighter, sort of completed the, anybody here see the movie Top Gun? Anybody raise your hand, see Top Gun? So if you could have Tom Cruise or David in that key role, who would you have voted for? I think Tom Cruise in a, you know, close runoff election perhaps, but despite a 23-year career in the military, as he finished up, he never rested. He went and got a law degree at Penn State, does a lot of pro bono work in Pennsylvania, where his home base is, and he also in his spare time runs a family HVAC business. So, you know, terrific individuals, very accomplished in many, many different realms. But what's really key to me is they're former college teammates, both played at the Air Force Academy. And when David mentioned that, what if we got he and Greg on a panel, they could both share some of their experiences. I think a little bit of their life's journey is interesting. I believe this notion of, you know, service to others didn't exist just only in the football field, but way beyond the football field. And so we're really privileged to have these fine gentlemen here today. And so please welcome Greg and David. Thank you.
In the spirit of actually having a plan, I put together some questions that I thought might be helpful to the attendees. I'm an attendee. I was sitting in the audience all morning. I've been here. I've seen some of you guys the last couple of years, and I absolutely love being here. Show of hands, how many guys are 35 years or younger? Okay, cool. So a lot of what we've been hearing about is great stuff, and Greg and I spent our time at lunch talking about how we can relate to all of these things. But Greg and I haven't seen each other for 35 years until today. And what I say, yeah, I graduated college in 1989. Last time I saw Greg was at my graduation day, May 31st, 1989. We've been on the phone a couple of times, and you know, Mark suggested, why don't you interview Greg? And I said, yeah, I want to. I said, but I want to dial it down. Like, I want to talk about the nitty-gritty stuff, that your first job, you know, what the hell does it mean to be a Fortune 500 corporate executive? How do you deal with a board? And so the way I thought I would try to share that, again, the target audience being the 35 and younger crowd, is to let you know about Greg. Sam Acho has a decent smile, but the first guy with the greatest smile on the planet was Greg Johnson. And we were teammates, and we would just talk. There was something, you just let him smile. It just makes you feel good. So when my senior year, we were just scoring all kinds of points. And we had D. Dallas as our quarterback, Greg Johnson. So for the first game of the year, Greg Johnson scores 3 touchdowns. And then for the next game of the year, he scores 3 touchdowns. And all of a sudden, he's like got double the number of touchdowns of anybody in college football. I loved blocking for him then, and I love the privilege of learning from you now in your capacity as a corporate exec. So everybody knows you went to the Air Force Academy. Talk to me about what happened in your time in the Air Force Academy and then how you transitioned out.
Yeah, you know, the Academy was a life dream. I have an older brother who went to West Point. My father was a military officer. We lived, learned, grew up all around the world. And I went to the academy, got a chance to play football. I was an operations research major there, and then they stretched you militarily, and then football. Played football for 4 years. And so at the academy, I just became I grew up as a person. And I eventually served in the Air Force right at the academy for 5 years. 5 years I was doing essentially contract negotiations for fuel systems, for environmental remediation, those kind of things for the Air Force. And then I served for 5 years, and eventually I found my way into corporate America. And I spent the next 30 years essentially in either positions of marketing or brand management, general management, CEO of a company, now executive vice president. So that's a very quick voiceover of kind of my journey.
So talk to me about your family. Your wife?
Yeah, my wife, Corinne Wall, she's an OBGYN, no longer practicing. I have 3 kids. I have a daughter, Ayla, who's 17, and I have girl-boy twins, Armand and Noraya. They're 13. And when the twins came along, she made the choice of stopping practice so we could be there for our kids. And so, unfortunately, she had to trade off her career because of the schedule that I had, but all in service of partnering with me to raise 3 beautiful kids.
So tell me about your current job now. Who are you employed by?
Intuit. Yes.
And
But
what's
we're
the new
into
job?
it. Yeah. My responsibility is to figure out how do we take all of our assets as a company to market, whether they're globally, so both international markets, and what capabilities do we leverage. So I manage our marketing, our customer success, as well as our sales organizations and our ability to deliver our products and services around the world. Intuit's a company, our mission is to power prosperity around the world. And we do that by providing essentially software that enables customers, particularly small businesses, to run and grow their business. And my job, my responsibility is to figure out how to understand the needs of customers in the market, how do we leverage our capabilities and assets, and then how do we deliver those so we make an impact in small business lives.
So for the 35 and under crowd and myself, the concept of being a high-paid corporate superstar at a Fortune 500 company sounds incredibly sexy and romantic, with private jets and cocktail parties every night and all the like. What's it really like?
It's not like that. So let's be clear, it's not like that. It is, I think everybody's life these days is intense. And, probably the most intense part of the life I lead is the need to be intentional with your time. Time management is what the key to your success. How do you scale yourself? Where do you spend your time every minute of every day, from waking up at 4:30 to going to bed at 10 on most nights, and then in between, you're pretty much scheduled. So having really good time management skills and being prepared for every day looks a little bit different. Every interaction looks a little bit different. That's kind of what the job is. And so I get a lot of joy out of the work and the people I engage with. But in terms of the way that we approach the job and what the real life day-to-day looks like, it's more of a very scheduled and regimented and a big focus on how do I manage my time.
Well, when Joe was up here earlier talking, it was really interesting about whether or not you should take that job. I was just waiting for him to drop one more colorful word in there, and then I felt like the whole speech would have been perfect. But so what do you do? How do you balance it? Because you've got a 12 to 14-hour a day job and travel.
Yeah.
How do you timeshare it with your wife? Because some of us have families. Some of us are gonna have families, and then what's the decision? Like, am I really not gonna take that job, or am I in a strong enough, wrong word, am I in a marriage that will support that job? I mean, again,
Yeah.
how do you view that? And how does it work for you?
Well, I'm blessed to have such an amazing wife. And we view our responsibility as a partnership. Now, so it happens that she carries more than her fair share. I have a role to play, and I try to be as present and as intentional I can as I interact. But she takes a lot of the burden. She's our chief operating officer for the family. She's also the chief executive officer. And she's also just a partner. So we rely heavily upon her to really, even more so than I'm comfortable with, but it's just practical. And I say comfortable, she really is shaping our kids for the future. And I do as well, but that's a trade-off that comes with where I'm spending my time and where the role that I play. But we've talked about it, and we communicate, and we're just both comfortable that it takes two of us to be successful in life and for our kids. And so having a partner like that is a blessing. And so I'm certainly blessed to have a partner.
How busy are your kids' schedules when you're home? Like, how much time do your kids actually have for you versus how much time do you have available for them?
This is, so I was CEO of McAfee. I left McAfee. I took 6 months off because I felt like I just needed some time. And it was an opportunity for me to spend time with my family and my kids. This is in the last year, before I rejoined into it. And I thought that I would, didn't have a care in the world. I had 6 months. My plan was I'm going to just be present. And then I started to realize what their lives were like. They were busier than I was. They get up, they go to school, they have training, they're all athletes, they're volunteering. Their schedule's busy. And I found out that I spend much less time with them. I was missing fewer things than what I thought. And that was a surprise to me because our kids these days are just so overscheduled. I don't know what yours are like if you have kids, but my kids at this age are very overscheduled and not a lot of time really to get those high quality parental moments, and so I enjoyed the time I spent, but I was a little disappointed because I thought that having that time would have enabled me to have a much richer, deeper engagement. But the reality is they're busy too. They're busy too.
Well, and so I think that's important. Like, as you're trying to decide how hard am I going to work? My wife is sitting back in the center there, and there was a time when my wife saw me work 16, 18 hours a day. She saw me leave the house at 4:30 in the morning, come home at 10 o'clock at night. I have a 45-minute drive each way, and then she's seen me not work for the last 3 years. So you sort of work, and I promised the family I would always get there, and you can get there. And so we're not telling you what the right answer is, but this whole work-life balance thing, there's a spectrum. And some people are going to tell you there is no such thing as work-life balance. You make the job work and you get her done. And then some people are going to say you don't ever do anything at the expense of your family. And it doesn't sound like either one of those bookends are universally applicable. And so the idea is just to have some semblance of what are you giving up. Now, I will tell you, my dad died in March a year ago. And I was with him when he died. And our family was gathered around. We had people coming in and coming out. And my dad had made a lot of money. And it didn't matter. And you've heard a few other people talk about it too. Like, what really matters is your family. But your family is not always the glass ball that you're tossing. Your family isn't always the rubber ball either. But your family's a lot more resilient than you give it credit for, or than you understand if you have the relationship like you have with your wife, like I have with my wife. So I guess it would be, don't be scared to have to take on a balancing act, because almost everybody who's been successful probably leaned, I don't know, I'm looking at you, Mark. There's been times where you're like, man, I pretty much had to put my family on hold so I could get through the day in different jobs. And so I'm not telling you what the right answer is, but just understand that if you have a strong spouse and you have a strong family relationship, your family is resilient. Military families are a prime example. Shit, I would go away for, 9 months to a year at a time. And military families have learned how to do this. And so I hope that makes some kind of sense. What I do want to say now is this has sort of been me trying to let you understand who my friend Greg Johnson is. Corporate CEO, guy who's been to Kraft Foods, Best Buy. We're going to talk about some of these other things too. But there's a few people in here that are going, hey, what the heck is a vice president? Hey, what the heck is a manager? What is a director? What is a CEO versus the chairman of the board? Like, those are all questions that I still have, and I'm 56 years old. So at any point as we keep talking here and you come up with a question, just shout out and get our attention, because I don't want to make you wait till the end of something to come up with the answers to your questions. I hope that makes sense. So please, if I spur a question or Greg spurs a question, fire it out. All right, so here we go. Was it always your goal to be a Fortune 500 exec?
No.
Where did your goal start?
Life is a journey, and I think for my career, my parents raised me really to be independent and to live up to my full potential, whatever that may be. And I think as I started, it's been a discovery, uncovering, it's been a journey. In certain turns, certain legs of the journey were beautiful and went well, and certain legs didn't. And along that way, my true north, though, was really about fulfilling, living up to my potential. And my view of where that would take me kind of changed as I got more and more experiences. So did I always dream of becoming a Fortune 500 executive? No, I can't say that was. But as I was going along that path, it started to become a possibility. And then it became a little bit where I felt like I had the potential. Therefore, I started to work towards things. And that's been, my journey has been discovery around where my talents, strengths could take me. And then I would adjust and kind of think about where do I want to be in a few years. And that, that was a moving target. The more I got exposed to different challenges, different organizations.
I want to do a chronology. So you went from the Air Force. What next? 5 years as a contracting officer. What was your next job?
Yeah. That was my first job outside the military.
Yes.
Kraft Foods.
Yep.
Jack's Pizza. I learned how to market frozen pizza. First job.
And then what? All right, let me ask you, what did you do in that job? Market pizza, but more specifically, what were your day-to-day functions?
My job there was really managing this $160 million business called Jack's Pizza, and that meant trying to figure out how to profitably grow it. So market it. We looked at supply chain. How do we sell? How we distribute it? We would talk about what are the toppings we put on the pizza. We would design the packaging. All those things were within my responsibility.
Does it seem like a big job compared to what you're doing now?
Not
No.
now, but at the time, I felt like I was stretched to my limit, and I learned a ton through that first experience. And just as I said earlier, each job grew in complexity, and I started to grow and develop. And as I developed, I started to realize my potential could take me further than where I was. And my view was that eventually I'll reach that job in that point in time where I didn't feel equipped to take the next step. so to speak. And but then I just figured it out. The key to your career is continuous development. And so that's something we'll talk about later. But I tell you, we're all work in progress. I think Brad said that earlier. And the key to my success, to the extent I've had successes, part of it, a big part of that formula is growth, development, and learning.
It's hard to say the key to my success, though, isn't it? It makes you feel like, but you have to be able to say it, and it's almost like a doctor talking about somebody's medical condition. We have to be able to talk about your success, because if we can't figure out what the symptoms and circumstances were along the way, then we're never going to give you a path. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so you may have answered a question that was starting to happen in my mind, how much of your journey do you attribute to your education versus your experience? And you kind of just mentioned that you learn so much as you go, and so I guess my new question is, what things do you use in your mind to formulate whether or not you do take the next step to the journey, part of the journey that you're not sure if you know how to do just yet, but you may have had some experience that gives you some sort of inkling that maybe it's the next thing you need to do? Does that make sense?
No,
Yeah.
those are both great questions, and I was trying to answer your second question by getting ready to ask him why he left Kraft Foods to go to his next job. But, and then Greg and I had a separate discussion about education versus football, because that's something that this room has that not everybody out there has. But so the question is, how much of it was education versus experience, and then how do you know when to take the next step? So I'll just let you answer it instead of playing 20 questions.
I think early on, the education, and more specifically, just what it took to balance playing sports, playing football in this case, being in the military academy, and then just pursuing a degree. In the things you learn, you stretch yourself, you learn how to manage time, then you learn how to learn, particularly if you have a discipline that just introduced you to multiple type, a multidisciplinary degree. Early on, that was really important because the education helped me become a learner. And whenever you work in different companies, you have to understand, you have to learn not only what they do, how they do it, and how do you start to differentiate yourself, compete, win. And a lot of that has a lot to do with the way you think, the way you process, the way you analyze. So early on, I think the academic training was a big asset. However, for the duration of my career, I would tell you what I learned through sports, playing sports, was probably a bigger contributor to my success because of things like leadership, because of things like understanding how to put the work in, how to compete, how to build a team, how to be a part of a team, how to lead, how to follow, how to take direction. All of those things started to become the kind of things I relied upon to be successful. And when it came time to, I was kind of naive through my career. Early on, I made decisions. I would say I was immature in the way I thought about managing my career. The way I thought about it was, is there a big problem to solve? And would I enjoy the challenge? And then as soon as I became more focused on that, then I would look up and say, what's my next challenge? And if the next challenge was not as exciting as the last, that would be something that I would start to think about. Well, should I do something different? But that's the woulda, coulda, shouldas.
Yeah.
I think early in my career, I was chasing challenges. It was never about climbing the ladder or achieving promotions or making money. I was very much more focused on what challenges are interesting. So when I managed my career early on, it was about that. It was really more about what is the challenge, And would I get excited about it? And then then I started to think about things like the people I'd be working with. That became much more important in my career. The values of the company became much more important in my career. The teams that I was part of, the teams that I led. And as I started to understand my career wasn't just my journey, but it was a journey of being a part of something, then I started to mature a little bit and make more thoughtful decisions around how I manage the rest of my career. And so there is this, I don't know if everybody goes through this, but there's a process of you kind of grow into you kind of grow into the career that you're leading. And early on for me, it was much more about achievement, next challenge, and then looking for the next challenge. And then I started to mature and think more about the legacy, the impact, the people around me. Those became more important.
Does that cover it? So back to your first point about academics versus experience. Show of hands, how many people have pulled an all-nighter in college? Okay, so there are 13 people that work for me in my company, and nobody who has not been to college has ever pulled an all-nighter. I have an opinion. I don't know how valid or universal it is, but a college degree for the kinds of people who work in my construction industry, typically not critical. For the guys that are running nuclear power plants and hydrogen fuel and Terry from West Point with his methane, you need a college degree for that stuff. A lot of jobs, though, you could do it without a college degree, but what a college degree teaches you to do is have stick-to-itiveness, get on a timeline, and finish a program. A college degree teaches you that a job doesn't start at 8:30 and end at 4:30. And it teaches you that sometimes you have to work beyond the wages. If you understand that, then when people work for you, they want to show up at 8 o'clock and they want to leave at 5 o'clock, that is fine. If that's what you're hiring them and paying them for, great. But as somebody who went to college, that ability to pull that all-nighter and get all the work done is what's going to get you started. But when it's time, but in the long run, that academic degree, again, unless you're in a highly technical field, again, my opinion, it doesn't matter. All it did was teach you to have good work ethic and commitment to your craft, the same way that football did. And then eventually, as when you hear Greg's life experiences and work experiences start building him to a place where he's ready for the next job. So you're at Kraft Foods. Did you leave Kraft Foods because you were bored in the job? Or did you leave Kraft Foods because you saw a shinier object? Or why did you leave Kraft Foods?
It was a shinier object. That
Okay.
wasn't even an object, it was a new challenge. I went to Motorola. I would do this room a disservice if I talked about all the steps along the way, only because there were a lot of things early on.
Okay.
I went to Motorola, I went to SC Johnson, I worked at Kodak, I worked at Gillette. There were a lot of moves early on, and it was really me trying to figure out my purpose in life, and me trying to understand, and have a point of view on how to manage my career. And I had mentors that I didn't realize they were mentors until later on. And I'll tell you what, having a mentor that you leverage and you use and that you invest in can really save you a lot of heartache just by helping you navigate really complex choices in your life. And so I think mentorship is something that it was there for me, but I didn't take advantage of it early on. I will tell you later in my career, it made all the difference. I'm sorry to see Brad Smith. I don't think he's still here. He was here earlier. But when I did the exercise earlier, he's the person that came to mind. Brad Smith is a huge mentor. He's the reason I joined into it. Then after 10 years, he actually helped me as I went to be the CEO of McAfee. I talked to him then, and I talked to him as I thought about what do I do next, and I actually came back to Intuit. And, Brad has been, if I had a Brad in my life back then, I probably would have made some better choices. and they were there for me. I just didn't know how to access it.
Well,
Yeah,
and that's what
so-
this room is about. And I'll go get to your question in a second. But this room is about everybody potentially finding a Brad Smith in your life or a Mark Flynn. And Brad Smith isn't going to answer he will answer every email, guaranteed. I couldn't believe he answered mine.
Within 5 minutes.
Within 5 minutes, yeah, that was insane. But if they don't pick you up as a mentee, they're going to at least point you in the right direction. The beauty of this room is this is people who have proven they can get a degree and they can compete in athletics at the same time. And there's just not a lot of people out there. And so the people who could potentially be your mentors are floating around here. It may be somebody your own age. I just picked up a new mentor. The guy's a year younger than me, but he's a senior vice president at Intuit. Plus, he's stuck with me now. I've ducked him for 35 years. But this is a new friendship. I'm learning things. It isn't all just about my notes for this. I've been talking to Greg about business stuff too. This is the opportunity. Now, back when you didn't recognize, I'm not going to forget him, but how would you have recognized a mentor? How would you know that somebody is trying to mentor you? What did you miss?
Yeah. What I missed is what my role was in it. I think the people so how do you identify a mentor? First of all, at least my perspective, it is whenever you can see a person and you might think there's something worth emulating, something worth learning, or you hear about an experience that they've had, those are all these clues, if you will, to there's something that you can get from this person. And if they ever, and that's what you need to start to do, is just think about the opportunity that you have all around you to learn from others. And to be successful in life, it's about continuous learning. And for me, it was more a matter of understanding that, and it was said earlier, understanding most mentors want to help. But for them to help, you need to be able to ask and access them. And a coulda, woulda, shoulda for me throughout, when I look back, is there a lot of parts of my journey that I made decisions on my own that I would have benefited from a mentor or somebody to help me think through or share or even just slow me down for a second and just have me consider things differently. Things have worked out, but the road less traveled didn't need to be as bumpy at times as it was.
Well, and now, because you have the handout and Mark Flynn puts everybody's email in there, I will tell you that I reached out to Jonathan Rosenberg, big Google exec, because I had a very specific question about something very unique, and I got the help. The best mentors you're ever going to have are the people who are closest to where you are. And it doesn't necessarily, it could be peer mentors, it could be somebody above you. I learn things from the people I work for or that work for me all the time. The best mentors you're going to have are the people who are closest to where you are. But if you're struggling and you don't know who to call, your lifeline, your phone a friend is in the program. Pick a name. Throw a line out to Sam Acho. You'd be shocked that you'll get a response. He's probably not going to put his arm around you and give you warm milk and cookies and tell you everything's going to be great. Actually, he's such a great guy, he probably would. But he'll point you in the right direction to somebody. That's what this is about. I mean, it's Bill Campbell did this for people. And you see what the trees look like. So we are now the fruit. Did I just kill it? Sorry. We are now the fruit on Bill Campbell's tree, all of us. And the way that we pay it forward, as Tom was saying earlier, is by listening and learning and being a part of that fraternity and that community that Bill Campbell made. What was the other question, please?
Yeah, hello. Awesome content here and very practical thinking by you, Greg, obviously. I just wanted to delineate, you talked about mentors and Brad being able to guide you from company to company. And early on in your career, you were after achievement, and maybe all of us, we've reached a mountain, and then it's like, oh, but that mountain looks good.
Yep.
Just kind of like, how do you go from, what are the pillars that you've experienced? One was achievement, and maybe some of your mentors were able to guide you through those pillars. But how do you view it, your progression and motivation and what you're after?
That's a great question. I think it evolved. I think the mountain achievement was probably the most motivating, factor early in my career. But then what I started to understand much better, and Brad said it earlier, you start to think about the content, the problem you're trying to solve, and ask myself the question, if I'm successful, how will it feel? What difference, what impact would I have made? And that helps me understand, am I attuned with the company's mission? I started to think about the company more, who I'd be working with. You know, what are the values of the company? Do your research on the people you'll be working with, and ask yourself the question, can you learn from, are these people you can learn from? Do you share things in common that can help you become a better team, a better person, help you learn? So the culture, the environment becomes something else that I look at. Number three, you know, I do look now or more for, can I imagine not just the next job, but can I imagine the next 5 years, the next 10 years? And therefore, do I have kind of a longer range view of what's possible? Because your career comes and opportunities come in very unexpected ways. And so as I evaluate opportunities, I tend to think about the things I just suggested, and then imagining, paying it forward and saying, when successful, how will I feel? Who will I work with? And then ultimately, can I actually see a longer-term vision as I make this choice? And those are some of the big considerations that come into play for me now that you know, I kind of grown into. I've learned my way into that, you know, to that approach.
Does that answer it for you? So how do you spot talent? You're looking out in this room and somebody's working for you at Intuit. What's going to stand out to you to make you want to take an interest in potentially mentoring somebody?
Well, you don't spot talent just by looking at them. You spot talent, I think, every interaction you have with, when you're a leader of an organization. So I have 2,600 people in my organization, and you don't get a chance to interact with them deeply enough to understand, this is a very important question, enough to understand who they are. You don't actually have the time, all the time, to really understand the talent in your organization, so it's a two-way street. The way I view it is that every interaction I have is an opportunity for me to have an impact on the people I connect with. And so that's how I scale myself. It's when I get ready in the morning, I look at my calendar, and the first thing I think about is, what are the interactions that I have? What is my intention in that interaction? And then therefore, that allows me to be present. And I think when you spot talent, it's about creating a culture and environment where you let them know that, one, you're approachable. Number two, that you're invested in them and their success. And number three, you make sure the invitation is there, so you make yourself accessible. And if you do that well, then as they reach out, and I spot talent by, quite honestly, a lot of the talent has come to me, and then you build a relationship and a rapport, and then you realize there's so much more you can do to enable them. And so there's so much in your career that really starts with you. And when you get higher in an organization, the more difficult it is to spot talent that are all around you. But if you are an employee in an organization, making yourself accessible, taking advantage of those opportunities is how you get spotted. And, you know, so it is, this whole, your success is increasingly based upon the people you're surrounded by, the people you grow and develop, and, but it's a two-way street. So it's really helpful for anybody in any organization that wants to grow, that wants to develop, to think about how do they access the resources they need to grow and develop, And it is a two-way street.
How about this? So how do you balance, I forgot about one. How do you balance personal growth versus just getting the job done versus branding in an age of 30-second TikTok clips? And like, you know, when we were growing up, people said, just bloom where you're planted. You know, I'm like, okay, that's nice, but you know, you got to do the basics of the job, but you want to leave it better than when you got there. So how do you early in your career, how do you make sure you keep growing while you're still doing a good job at the same time and not over promoting yourself to the point where you look like a butt snorkeler?
Yeah. Before I answer, let me ask the question. How many people in the room have played golf before? Okay, all right, I'll tiptoe in this metaphor then. I actually had an executive coach who told me, and it became part of my point of view around growth and development. When you play golf, if you're not a good golfer, you can pretty much go around the whole course and play only using maybe 3 or 4, maybe 4 clubs in your bag. And you learn how to hit a certain club, and those become, within the context of golf, that's your strength. But as you go from being a hacker to becoming somebody that is a professional golfer, you have to learn how to use every club in your bag. You need to understand every situation and how to get yourself in and out and manage the course. And all these skills are things that you need to grow and develop in order to become a professional at the professional level. I think from a career standpoint, it's very similar. When I was early in my career, there are 3 or 4 clubs that I used. I worked hard. I tried to work harder than everybody else. You know, I tried to volunteer. I tried to be a team leader. And these things were things that came naturally to me. I relied upon them and was successful. But it wasn't enough to equip me for that next job and that next job. The next job and next job are things I needed to grow and develop and learn. Okay, Greg, how do you become more approachable? How do you build more trust? How do you more quickly diagnose? How do you hunt out friction in an organization? How do you enable people? All these things became new clubs in the bag of leadership that I needed, that I wasn't growing or developing until I understood that that's your career. It's continuous development. And so I focus a lot on development. Yes, I'm 56. Yes, I've been a CEO of a company, and I have executive vice president at Intuit. But I'm work in progress. I'm still growing and developing. And I have to own that. And again, development comes through a lot of the people around you can help you develop. But you have to have the want to. And you have to realize that you need to develop in areas potentially where that are not strengths, and in areas where you know the future value of those. You know, one thing we talked about is being patient in your career. And some people are impatient the way they think about their career and how they manage it. My recommendation, if you ever find yourself feeling impatient, to ask yourself the question of what else can I learn? What else can I do to develop right now in this moment? What opportunities are there for me? Because that's what success takes. It's continuous growth and development. And rather than thinking about time, think about opportunities that you have in order to become a better version of yourself. And that better version is going to propel you and take you to down whatever path you have. That will be a key to your success.
Awesome. How many people feel like an imposter? How many people feel like this thing is so much bigger than we are, and that Alan Eagle and Brad Smith and Mark Flynn and Tom Bratton and Joe Moglia, like how the heck did we all end up in this room? Anybody else? I feel like a total imposter. I was sitting in the seats this morning, dude. I don't even belong on the stage. The point is, you're not. This is the Bill Campbell tree. And all of these people that are showing up here, the Greg Johnsons of the world, the Mark Flynns, they're another seed in your roots, you know. And this thing only grows if we keep it alive and we share with people what we're learning and how we learned it here, and we take it forward and we pay it forward. Keep coming back. This is the third year I've been here, and every year I learn something new, and I'm more amazed. I'm more amazed than anything at how hard you and Diane work, and I'm so deeply appreciative to the both of you. So on that note, Greg Johnson, we're looking for great things, my friend.
All right, buddy. All right.
Thank you.
You boss.